Well, there have been extraordinary scenes in Berlin tonight as thousands of people gathered to hear Barack Obama deliver key foreign policy speech on his current European tour. Democratic presidential hopeful laid out his vision for America's place in the new world order, saying he's speaking as a proud citizen of the world, of the world, of the world.
It is a big idea. It is a big idea. A new world order.
Hello friends, I am the Anti-Terrorist. Thank you for your emails and messages of support, and for staying part of the conversation. You know, one of the tried and true ways to get a nation united and moving in the same direction whenever you want them to, is to either discover or create an enemy. Now, the long-time favorite enemy of the state, and for the past 50 years, the darling of books, cinema, and television, has been communism. No enemy in recent history has inspired the sort of knee-jerk fear and hysteria that the commies have. Nor has anything since the Spanish Inquisition culminated in the type of witch hunt that played out in 1950s America, with the hijinks of the House Un-American Activities Committee. Ah, what a time that was.
In recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he openly declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it. If a person consistently reads and advocates the views expressed in a communist publication, he may be a communist. If a person supports organizations which reflect communist teachings, or organizations labeled communist by the Department of Justice, she may be a communist. If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States, she may be a communist. If a person does all these things over a period of time, he must be a communist.
The blacklisting, the informing, the testifying, phrases like better dead than red, makes swapping French fries to freedom fries look sort of lame now, doesn't it? With a proclivity for memorable hair, managing to overdress for all the wrong occasions, truly astonishing accessories, and the uncanny ability to stay in fashion for 40 years on posters and t-shirts worldwide. The commies have certainly got staying power, perhaps more than you think. Would it surprise you to hear that you have at last, dear friends, been conquered after all? And the Communist Manifesto was published on February 21st, 1848, and has become one of the world's most influential political manuscripts. It was commissioned by the Communist League and written by theorists Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And the backbone of the document is known as the 10 Planks. And for the average Joe, whether he likes it or not, if he holds a driver's license, pays taxes, carries a passport, votes in an election, registers his marriage and the births of his children, he's been practicing communism all of his life. You don't believe it? Well, let's take a look at the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. The first plank of the Communist Manifesto calls for the abolition of all rights to property and land, and the application of all rents of land for public purposes. You don't own any land. You're renting it from the state in the form of a property tax, aren't you? Try not paying that tax and you'll see who the owner is so fast it'll make your head spin. The second plank to the Communist Manifesto calls for a heavy, progressive or graduated income tax. There was a time in our countries when we didn't pay income tax. I suspect you already recognize the fact that you're practicing an aspect of communism here, as long as you're still paying any form of personal income, home, or car tax. One day, Bill dies, and his legally married wife Doreen says, "Oh good, now I get all the toys." However, the state comes in and says, "Whoa, hold your horses, Doreen. We've got a marriage agreement here and an inheritance tax, which means we get our grubby hands on 28 to 35% of the toys before you get your hands on them." This confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels was part and parcel of the IRS Inland Revenue Program of seizing and distraining people's property and selling it if they don't pay their income tax or social security taxes. And we have a host of government agencies with the power to seize our bank accounts, take our businesses, our homes, property, and our children. You think you're not an immigrant? Well, fair enough. But with the rate of new statutes appearing daily, I can guarantee you that everyone is a rebel. You just may not have been caught and prosecuted. Yet. The fifth plank calls for the centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. We have the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve Banks in Britain and America, and we have fiat currencies in the form of the Federal Reserve Note and the British Pound. The sixth plank calls for the centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. In the US, we have the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and the UK has Ofcom, the Office of Communications. You can't transmit your beliefs over the airways without a license from the government, and they can regulate what you say. The seventh calls for the extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, the bringing into cultivation of wastelands, and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. Except we're talking about corporations here, artificial entities. How about government programs for the regulation and control of the public lands? Can you say national parks? Do we have any legislation that deals with the improvement of the soil in accordance with a common plan, such as soil conservation districts? The eighth plank calls for equal obligation for all to work and the establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. Do you have a social security number? Social security has established Westerners into a gigantic industrial army. We're all members of the same group. You can't get employment without it. Tinker with the economy, raise the interest rates, seduce people through advertising into believing they need two incomes to support an aspirational lifestyle, so that mum and dad both have to work. Then Big Brother can steal their children and mold their minds for the state's use. The ninth plank calls for urban renewal, population control, and regional planning programs. Over the past 100 years, the population of people living on the land has decreased significantly, and people born in the rural areas have gravitated towards the cities to attend colleges in order to train as doctors and engineers and scientists, then sought employment with corporations instead of returning to the land. The projection is that by 2015, small farms and businesses in the country will give way completely to huge corporate farms. Free education for all children in government schools, the abolition of children's factory labor, and the combination of education with industrial production. This one speaks for itself. Do we send our children to state-run brain laundries or not? So there we have it. Beneath the thinnest veneer of capitalism, we're all practicing communists. And what is the missing link? The glue that holds these two supposedly opposite ideologies together? Why, it's Admiralty. If you hold a driver's license, pay taxes, carry a passport, vote in elections, register your marriage and the births of your children, then you are subject to Admiralty jurisdiction. Admiralty contains a harsh set of rules and procedures where there are no rights. In fact, there are no rights under any civil law jurisdiction, only privileges granted by the captain of the maritime venture. The alleged US President, Barry Sotoros, is a captain on the great ship United States, practicing the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto under Admiralty jurisdiction. There's no such thing as a right to use your property on the motorways, but the captain can grant the privilege to do so. There's no such thing as a right to operate a public business. It's a privilege allowed according to the captain's rules and regulations. Admiralty maritime jurisdiction is predicated upon the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. You can call it communism, you can call it socialism, you can call it Admiralty, you can call it the Roman civil law. But it's the exact opposite. The diametric opposite of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States of America. The creeping red menace has caught up with us at last. And so, thanks to Admiralty jurisdiction, communism may appear to come and go, but it's never really gone out of style. Thanks for listening, comrades.
Communism, my ass. You know, there's never really been a proper form of communism ever in the history of the world, don't you? Eh? I mean, you can't have the leaders eating steak and that while the people are eating bread. That's just daft, isn't it? It's not real. That's not real communism. That's bollocks. That is. That's some sort of capitalism mixed with fascism. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, that's not proper communism. Communism's where everyone lives together. Everyone has exactly the same. You know what I mean? You can't have this sort of bollocks going on, lad. You can't. You gotta sort them out. You know what I mean? The communist bastard.
Long live our Soviet motherland, built by the people's mighty hand. Long live our people, united and free, strong in a friendship tried by fire. Long may our crimson flag inspire, shining in glory for all men to see. Through days dark and stormy, while great Lenin